Okay, so this bird really is a pretty. Be careful not to drop it to you. This week, we surprisingly opened with a little follow-up from last week's concluding joke with Chiu closely monitoring her new teammate. But hey, I'm sure they could trust this motormouth not to blow their cover. Yeah, I guess there's supposed to be one of these every season, though at least it's not the pink this time. And to be fair, it does at least match up with Hinata's established character and quirks. In any case, Chiyu provided a quick cover story, and they once again pulled their Garu friend to the side. Hinata admitted that she just plain forgot that they need to keep a lot of their stuff a secret, so they decided to have a meeting after school to have a little review. Meanwhile, in the Byogen Kingdom, the villains were also having their own little meeting.
Precureが3人になるとはね。
Precureが何よ?
Lady, don't tempt them. Still with that, Shindoine volunteered to be the villain of this week. Back with the Precure, they reviewed everything they used so far, mostly to help Hinata get caught up, which she desperately needed, since she was comically mispronouncing 50% of what they were saying. One new little bit of info we got was how Queen Teotinu fought King Byogen in quite the epic fight, as you can see. Maybe you should wear a shorter dress next time, Queenie. Anyway, it ended in a tie with both incapacitated, and with that, the king shifted his priorities to Earth to help rebuild his body. Thus, this team was finally finished with all of their tutorials, though one of them might need a refresher later. This was evidenced the next day when Hinata couldn't pay attention in class and couldn't even explain the 3 components of photosynthesis. Here's a hint, you're part of a team that could represent all 3. But yeah, as established, Hinata was embarrassed by her ineptitude, even admitting she hated the fact that she could remember most of the Precure related stuff they went over the previous day. So yeah, that earlier scene that seemed like just a bunch of irrelevant little jokes, it's actually playing into Hinata's established character and is building the basis for this week's main conflict. This show frustrates me with how much I love these characters. But yeah, while I don't like assuming stuff like this, I do wonder if Hinata might legitimately have ADHD, as she seems to have most of the textbook symptoms. Considering this series' major themes, highlighting mental health wouldn't feel out of place, and they do seem to be playing up the difficulties of dealing with it. In any case, as the de facto leader of this team, Nodoka was left in a very difficult position that only got more complicated when Chiu paid her a visit and shared her concerns that she might be intimidating their new teammate, even though she really did want to help her get adjusted to being a Precure. Fun fact, this week's writer was Ikuko Takahashi, whom, according to IMDb, on top of having no Precure writing credits, has almost no credits in general. In fact, her most notable role was teaching Scarjo how to put a flower down in Lost in Translation. And yet, even though I don't think she was a writer on that film, it feels like they're taking elements directly from it. Even though both of these characters are Japanese, mentally they could be more foreign to the other. Chiu was very by the numbers and often tried to address everyone's needs and concerns, which ironically ended up pushing them away, as clearly evidenced during her intro episode. Meanwhile, Hinata was very impulsive and often overlooked other people's needs and concerns. The one thing the two had in common was that both recognized their bad habits, resulting in both being overly tactful around the other, leading to a breakdown of communication. The Precure may be superheroines, but like everyone else, one of the hardest things to learn is the importance of good communication skills. Anyway, as the title of the episode suggested, Nodoka was going to get them to try and hammer things out thanks to some aquarium tickets she got from her mother. They met up the next day, and okay, while I'm really not a fan of Mitsuru Aoyama's animation direction, as I do think it often leads to some awkward faces, I gotta give credit to this little shot of Hinata looking off to the side to highlight the intentional awkwardness between these two. Nodoka ended up taking charge of their little trip, starting with the requisite dolphin and penguin show. Hey Bob, check out that freak. Don't look at him, Harry. He probably works for some crazy chick who wears one of us on her head. As the day went on, the cures of water and light managed to see some different sides of the other, though Chiyu might have ended up showing too much when Hinata started spouting some really lame puns.
俺が魚まさかな
I haven't seen someone laugh at so many bad puns since Fua. I meant the Kamen Rider. Thank you. We're but amateurs. However, while spouting off some Naruto-level jokes, Hinata failed to notice Peggy-tan had fallen out of her hoodie and was being mistaken as one of the Aquarium's birds. Don't know how that could have happened since the other healing animals were close by, but whatever, this funny animation is hilarious. And just to complicate things even further, Shindoinen created a Mega Byogen that, okay, really? We're getting the tentacles this early into the season? Well, anyway, with two big problems piled up on their plate at the same time, Hinata and Chiyu couldn't agree on which to tackle first, with the former arguing from a more emotional standpoint, wanting to find Peggy-tan first, while the latter went from a more pragmatic standpoint, wanting to deal with the more immediate threat of the Mega Byogen first. In the end, it took Nodoka suggesting they split up to tackle both at the same time to work things out and act as the Kirk to this McCoy and Spock duel. I brought this up a little back during the Star Twinkle reviews because, well, sci-fi and pointy-eared aliens, but I do think this trope is far more exemplified in this show. In the end though, they didn't really need to split up as Peggy-tan ended up running into the baddies and wound up becoming their hostage. Chiyu tried to negotiate his release, but Hinata... I've got nothing. This girl is amazing for all the right and wrong reasons. How's that even possible? Understandably, the Mega Byogen didn't want to get in the middle of this little catfight until he was ordered to. As a result, it ended up slapping Peggy-tan out of Shindoinen's hand and into Nodoka's head and into Chiyu's. Jeez, everyone in this show has impeccable timing. Anyway, with that, we got our first full team transformation of this series, with of course the most impressive sequence being the young doctors putting on their coats. The preceding fight was short, but I don't mind it too much since again, this is an Aoyama episode, so I don't think it would have been that impressive of a fight, even if they had the time, and at least we did get some fun banter with Chiyu explaining to Hinata what Shindoinen meant when she called them audacious. Anyway, they defeated Squidward and rescued the Bubble Elemental. With that, the episode ended with Chiyu having gotten to know Hinata and her recklessness, now being able to take a firmer stance with her as a teammate, much to the relief of the latter. The light, the water, and the carbon dioxide could now make some beautiful photosynthesis together. As an episode written by a newbie writer, I went into this one with even lower expectations than normal, and yet I got another really solid episode that further built up these characters, and most importantly, their relationships with one another. It even kind of distracted me from the fact that this was animated by Mitsuru Aoyama. While it is a bit of a played out trope, the Freudian trio works because it helps to define a team's dynamics. The Spock works as the second in command and the brains of the team, the McCoy often as the impulsive muscles, and the Kirk as the leader and the heart of the team. Chiyu and Hinata didn't exactly fulfill the former two at first because they didn't want to conflict with the other and therefore weren't a true team yet. After all, true teammates and friends are the ones who can argue with each other. Thus, it took a real leader to get them to that point. This episode just had so many good interactions between every combination of this trio, highlighting their personalities while also exhibiting the difficulties that come with communicating with new friends. Within just 5 episodes, this feels like one of the most tightly knit Precure teams of recent memory. And it's really started to sell me on this series. I was even able to overlook the sometimes subpar Aoyama animation, as even that looked a little better than normal thanks to a wider variety of facial expressions. Yeah, some of the movements were still stiff and the fight was short, but when they dedicate this much time and effort into the personalities of our characters, I really don't mind. While I'll still try to temper my expectations for this series, it's really starting to win me over with its frustratingly good characters. If you haven't seen it yet, I just posted part 1 of my Happiness Charge Precure reviews. It's a series where, while I'll still remain as critical as I always am, I'm also starting to find at least a few more positive aspects from what used to be a show I couldn't stand at all. And if anything else, I think we can at least get some unintentional laughs out of it. Look forward to part 2 coming soon. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I think I'm gonna go rewatch one of Bill Murray's best movies. Seriously, this movie really should have won more than one Oscar.